There are places in history where the silence feels heavier than any scream, and the ancient city of Carthage is one of them. Beneath the dust of centuries lies a truth so disturbing that even archaeologists hesitate to describe it. Tonight, we're not just revisiting an ancient ritual. We're stepping into a world where faith, fear, and desperation collided in the most horrifying way imaginable. The Carthaginians believed their god demanded the purest offering, children, and that denying him would bring ruin. So they obeyed. What you're about to hear is not myth, not rumor, not legend. It is the story carved into urns, burned bones, and eyewitness accounts that survived long after the flames died. Listen closely, because from here on, every detail becomes darker. The Tophet was not merely a sanctuary. It was a furnace of sacrifice, echoing with prayers, music, and something far more terrifying. And once you understand what happened behind those stone walls, you'll realize why this place remained untouched for centuries. This is the beginning. And I promise, it only gets more unsettling from here. When a family walked toward the Tophet, the path felt unnaturally quiet, almost as if the entire city held its breath. The air smelled of burning resin, and the faint hum of distant drums carried through the streets. No one spoke. No one dared. Parents arrived dressed in their finest robes, not because they were celebrating, but because they believed the gods expected dignity, even in tragedy. The priests waited at the entrance, their faces marked with soot, their hands stained by rituals performed countless times. Behind them, the bronze statue of Moloch loomed over everything, massive, hollow, and heated from within. Its outstretched arms glowed faintly, ready to receive the next offering. The ground was scattered with footprints too small to have survived long. And yet, this place was considered sacred, a gateway between mortals and the divine. But for those who entered, there was no return unchanged. The drums grew louder as families approached, drowning out hesitation, drowning out conscience. Because here, belief was stronger than love, fear was stronger than instinct, and tradition, terrifying as it was, commanded obedience. This was the moment when fate could no longer be reversed. Inside the Tophet, the room was dim, lit only by torches that flickered against stone walls, marked by centuries of ritual. The chosen child was often no older than 3 or 4, sometimes a newborn. The parents held the child close, whispering final words, not knowing whether they were comforting the child or themselves. The priests moved slowly, deliberately, as if time itself bowed to the moment. They inspected the child, not for health, not for identity, but for purity. Any flaw was considered an insult to the deity, and the family would be shamed. In that moment, innocence became currency and fear became devotion. The child, unaware, reached toward the torchlight, fascinated by its movement. The mother looked away. The father tightened his grip. Their hearts wanted to run, yet their beliefs told them running would doom them all. This was the cruel paradox that bound them: sacrifice a child to preserve the future. The priests extended their hands, waiting. And once the child left the arms of the parents, the ritual shifted. It was no longer a family's burden. It was an offering. As the child was taken toward the bronze statue, the temple drums began to pound. Slow at first, then rising, beating like a monstrous heart. Their purpose wasn't ceremonial, it was practical. They were meant to drown out the cries. The drums masked the breaking of parents' resolve. They masked the horror of what was about to happen, and they masked the sound of innocence being taken. The priests circled the statue, chanting, their voices low and hypnotic. The heat radiating from the bronze god shimmered in the air, warping the edges of reality. Anyone watching would feel as if the world itself blurred. The child, confused by the noise, whimpered. Behind the family, other parents waited silently, knowing their moment was coming. They had witnessed this before. They had accepted it as the will of the divine. And still, every drumbeat pierced their souls. Every thud reminded them that faith demanded something far beyond prayer. It demanded blood. It demanded flame. And tonight, it demanded their child. The priest stepped forward, lifting the child into the glowing arms of the statue. The bronze hissed at the touch of living flesh, and for an instant, the entire temple seemed to freeze. The parents fell to their knees, but not in grief. In prayer, they begged the gods for mercy, for rain, for victory, for anything that might justify the cost. The priests chanted louder, pushing their voices over the drums, over the rising heat, over the unthinkable. Flames roared beneath the statue, fed by oil and incense, creating a suffocating haze that filled the sanctuary. The smell of burning offerings, wood, herbs, and flesh mingled into a single unbearable scent. To the outside world, this was devotion. To those inside, it was devastation. The offering was complete only when the flames accepted it fully, only when the cries faded, and only when the drums finally began to slow. In that moment, the priests lifted their hands, declaring that the gods had been satisfied. But every parent who stood in that room carried the weight of what they had given, a weight that would never be forgotten. When the ritual ended, the priest retrieved what remained of the child: small fragments, charred bones, ashes. These were placed in a clay urn, sealed carefully, and carried to the burial field outside the temple. The Tophet stretched across the landscape like a silent cemetery, filled with thousands of similar urns. Each one held a story of fear, faith, or desperation. Parents followed behind, moving slowly as if every step forced them deeper into the reality of what they had done. There were no tears. Not here. Grief was considered disrespectful to the gods. Instead, they stood in stillness as the urn was lowered into the ground. The soil closed over it quickly, swallowing the remnants of a life that had barely begun. And when the last handful of earth was pressed down, the family turned away. They didn't look back. They couldn't. Because in Carthage, sorrow was a private burden, and the gods watched closely. Centuries later, long after Carthage had fallen, archaeologists uncovered the Tophet once more. What they found sent shockwaves through the academic world. Thousands of urns, each filled with burnt bones of infants and young children. Evidence of ritual sacrifice. Undeniable. Unforgettable. Some historians tried to argue it away, suggesting disease or burial customs. But the burn patterns on the bones, the layers of ash, the inscriptions detailing offered children, none of it could be dismissed. It became clear that Carthage had built an entire spiritual foundation on sacrifice. The truth was darker than myth, darker than rumor. And as the archaeologists sifted through the ashes, they realized they weren't just uncovering remains. They were uncovering the echoes of a civilization willing to trade its future for survival. Each urn was a reminder of a life taken for a god who never answered. Today, the Tophet stands silent. The drums are gone, the flames extinguished, the statue broken. But the questions remain. What makes a society reach a point where it sacrifices its own children? Fear, faith, desperation? Or something far more human, an inability to challenge tradition even when tradition demands unthinkable things? As you've heard tonight, the most terrifying part of the Carthaginian ritual wasn't the fire. It wasn't the drums. It wasn't even the sacrifice itself. It was the belief that they were doing the right thing, that the gods required pain, that innocence was expendable. History forces us to look closely at these moments, not to judge, but to understand how darkness can grow in the name of devotion. And as we walk away from the ruins of the Tophet, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Sometimes, the most horrifying monsters are not gods, but the beliefs humans build around them.